Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the event. Just want to give everybody a couple more minutes just to get logged in, and then we'll get started. Thank you. Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's event. I'm just going to send out a quick poll just to make sure that everybody that has signed in now is able to see, and both myself and Michael. So just give me 1 second. Okay, it looks like everybody can see us and hear us perfectly fine. So firstly, good morning and maybe good afternoon for some of you people that are joining from around the EU and finding the time to join us on this, what will be a series of events, supply chain management. And today we'll be using the example of the food and beverage industry. So I'm Chris, I work here at Cooper Software, and today my colleague and industry expert Michael Cunningham, who, by the way, has got first-hand experience in both delivering into and working within the sector, is going to guide us through the art of balancing supply and demand and how intuitive, data-driven software can accomplish this. So what we'll do is we'll jump into a bit of a formal introduction and then go through the agenda for today's session. So without further ado. So as I just mentioned, I'm Chris Beasley. I'm the manufacturing and supply chain specialist here at Cooper Software. I've got just over 10 years of experience in the software, ERP, and business development sphere. Specialisms around warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, and supply chain logistics. And for a number of years, I've been helping businesses realize the benefits of their digital transformation with software. Michael?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the time may be where you are. I'm Michael Cunningham. As Chris alluded to there, maybe giving me a little bit too much fanfare. My background is in food and beverage manufacturing. I've worked in it in many different guises over the last 15 years. Again, you can see in the screen some of the areas which I've worked in. I think anyone which has remained in the industry for a period of time wears many hats essentially and covers essentially a holistic view of the industry. Started in research and development and worked my way through from operations, commercial, project management, and ultimately towards a supply chain focus over the last few years, managing companies through Brexit transitions, managing the impacts of COVID, things along those lines. And now within Cooper Software, I'm a consultant helping businesses with their digital transformation, essentially. My main focus and the software which we'll look at today is called IFS. And that's a system I'm going to show you today and how that can help your business looking at certain areas of the supply chain, essentially.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, just want to quickly run through some housekeeping so that we can ensure that everything runs seamlessly today and you all get a good experience. In order to make the most of the demo, you may see down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screens, there is the ability to raise questions. So please feel free as we're going through to raise any questions. And at the end, we'll get round to answering as many as we've got, depending on time. In case of any technical issues, if you can give me a signal in the chat, I'll be keeping an eye on that. And either myself or one of the team will help resolve it quickly. In a second, I will hand over to Michael, who's going to run through the rest of the session. And give you a bit of an introduction to who Cooper Software are and what we do. During the session, we are going to look to uncover and answer some of the questions regarding what is supply relationship management, what does supply performance management look like, and how do we envisage what supply chain support looks like. And as we say at the end, hopefully got 5-10 minutes to answer any questions. So without further ado, Michael, over to you, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much, Chris. Just in the interest of maintaining as much bandwidth as possible, as I'll be going between different systems on my computer, I'm just going to turn my camera off. That's okay, just to keep as much signal as I can get. So yeah, as Chris alluded to, I will start with a brief introduction to Cooper Software and who we are, essentially. We're a family-run business founded 2005. We're headquartered in the outskirts of Edinburgh in Scotland, for those of you not from the UK. We've worked for IFS, which is the software we're going to show today, for more than 15 years. And through organic investment, we've consistently grown as we've taken on more and more IFS customers. Essentially, we're a one-stop shop to deliver IFS, both in terms of product and industry knowledge. Myself, working for Cooper Software, come from a food and beverage background. We have multiple different people with industry experience within the specific market sectors we work in, to bring that experience view and how digital transformation can help improve businesses in that sector. We've grown to be one of the leading IFS partners in Europe, and we continue to invest in IFS. We've recently opened an office in Germany and have extended out our partnership to IFS Benelux, also to help us cover opportunities and help companies across continental Europe. And to really underpin our positioning and relationship with IFS, we're one of the first silver partners, certainly globally, and we're now one of only 15 gold partners across the world. Here's just a little bit more information about us and Cooper Software, essentially, and just kind of going round the histogram. We've delivered over 1,500 projects to over 200 IFS customers, and up to this point, we've worked certainly in the UK with over 50% of the IFS market. And as I touched on there earlier, we're expanding internationally into Europe. We've got experience of delivering IFS into multiple food and beverage customers, and what we like to call speciality IFS circles. What we can bring to customers is our industry knowledge from people like myself who are employed, and some of my colleagues from an industry background, but equally have had visibility working with companies so that we can sure we can deliver and consult on the best practice, the best ways to develop and evolve your business. All of this is underpinned essentially by our ISO 9001 accreditation for our IFS implementation methodology. And as you'd imagine, these are big projects for not just us, but the customers we work with. So we work to industry standards, whether it's Prince2, Scrum, or our Agile methodology. We don't try to be all things to all men, essentially. So we're specialists in the areas which, unsurprisingly, IFS are, whether that's enterprise asset management, service and maintenance, manufacturing, engineering, construction. We have dedicated teams which have the required knowledge and industry background to deliver solutions to each of these areas. And within that, as I've touched on, just using finance as an example, where we would work with clients in that very specific area, we have finance chartered accountants working with finance directors on the customer side, or someone like myself with broad experience within the food and beverage industry working with opposite numbers, whether supply chain or operations on the customer side. So us as a long-standing and trusted partner of IFS are well positioned to continually deliver the IFS system and digital transformation to customers just now and into the future. Now, the software, just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about it in general. So today, as Chris alluded to, we're going to focus on IFS food and beverage solution. Now, if I click through, what we can see here is an overview of the IFS food and beverage solution map. What you can see in front of you essentially is along the kind of top black boxes would be the backbone of the majority of food and beverage companies that we would deem to work with. From here, you can see below some of the more specific areas, whether it's product lifecycle management, sales and marketing and demand management, supply chain management. All of these are rolled up into an industry solution so that straight out of the box, anyone taking up on the system has a pre-canned group of modules that will deliver the performance they require from the system. Today, as Chris touched on, we're looking at supply chain, and we're predominantly going to focus on the supply or supplier side of the business. Again, we don't have a huge amount of time today, so we'll try to give you a slice or a flavour of how IFS can help you or your customers deliver performance required from that supply base. And here's an example of just some of the customers, just to call out a few rather than all, working in our IFS and ourselves have worked with in the food and beverage industry. Again, we look to work in certain targeted micro verticals. So currently, whether working with William Grants or Gordon MacPhail in the whisky industry, or whether it's ingredient manufacturing for companies like McPhee, who actually I implemented IFS with back in 2017, or specific customers in the dairy world, being Volac or others that are coming on board currently. But IFS and ourselves have a wide breadth of knowledge and understanding of what's required by this industry sector. And this is backed up by companies like the ones you can see on the screen at the moment, having adopted IFS and continue to evolve with the software as the backbone for their industry to deliver their growth, their short, medium, and long term strategies and support the delivery of those. So I touched on IFS Cloud having a pre-packaged industry-specific end-to-end solution, and on the screen, what you'll see is probably where we'll begin our journey today. As I say, you can see along the top here, everything we touched on earlier is the backbone of a company, from product development right the way through to distribution, essentially, and all of that underpinned by the basics you'd expect, whether it's from HR, financials, quality aspects of the system, that will help and interact with this fully integrated package of modules to deliver the data that you require to make quicker, better business decisions. So that's a bit of the background to Cooper Software. That's a bit of the background to the IFS software. What I want to get on to now is really the reason why we're all here today. And that's to talk about essentially supplier risk, or risk that suppliers can bring to you. Now, just to read through this, and it's the only slide that I'll read out essentially, but when you think about strategic suppliers within your supply base, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? So, resourcing business from a strategic supplier exposes a purchaser to excessive cost or order fulfillment risk. Now, these are two big alarm bells for me, should I be working in procurement, and two things that I would want to avoid and ensure that I was in full control and visibility of, in order to minimize any of these risks that will have a significant impact on my business. In today's complex world, supplier risk management is just as critical to your organization's financial health and competitive performance as your efforts to produce cost savings, for example, in an operational sphere, or improve margins within your commercial sphere. Supplier risk management cannot be seen as just a one-time periodic event. It must be built into your organization's ongoing strategy in order for that to be effective and deliver the results that you require. But the level of risk each supplier brings may have no relationship to the amount you spend, or in actual fact, the frequency with which you do business with them. And again, coming back to what you can see on the slide, is resourcing from a strategic supplier exposes you to excessive cost or order fulfillment risk. To give an example, a contractor you use only once or twice a year to maintain, for example, potentially steam boilers, if you're doing some sort of thermal processing within your company, could cause significant financial damage if they send a worker who's improperly trained, causes a fire that then impacts onto your factory, and then you find out that their insurance has lapsed. So even a supplier that you're not spending a huge quantity of money of can expose you to a huge amount of risk. And how are you as a company going to manage that? How are you as a company going to minimize that risk, essentially? Key elements to any supplier risk management are really centralized supplier directory and information repository, automated qualification, monitoring, and effective reporting, and where possible, supplier self-service, and where applicable, giving controls and alerts to manage that. Now, again, we'll touch on some of these as we go through the live system today, and I'll show that how IFS can help you see and monitor these situations. So if we start from the very beginning, I like to ask a few questions, essentially, and at the moment it'll be me answering them myself, honestly. But what I would like you to do is maybe think about these as we work through it. So the first question really is, how are we classifying, or how are you classifying your supply base? Are you doing it at the moment? Are you not? Are you categorizing or classifying into strategic suppliers, approved suppliers, transactional suppliers? Do you have a central supplier directory? So we touched on previously one centralized digital repository for information. Do you currently have that at the moment that will allow you to analyze and assess the data in front of you? A big question, and this is very resonant for those working with strategic suppliers. Who has the power in these relationships? Is it the supplier or is it you as the customer? And how can you affect and impact that essentially? Who is feeling the push pull? Now, if you're a strategic supplier to a customer, you may think, well, it's okay. Can have some late orders. I can have some damaged orders. I can have some returns because I know that they don't have somewhere else that they can go to source that material. Equally, you as a customer, are you treating your supply base in an engaging manner that allow you to develop and extend an enterprise type relationship? So leading on to the final question there is, how are you actually engaging with that supply base? When you go to them, are you being reactional? Are you going to them with facts and figures? Are you going to them with analyzed data so that they can then react and either rectify a situation or in fact support a new direction that your business is going in order to deliver your goals and minimize the risks which we've talked about previously? So what I'll do at the moment is I'm just going to drop into the live software. If you just bear with me a second, I will um, transfer to that screen. So here, what you can see in front of you, is you'll remember from a few previous slides before, is the IFS solution beverage, food and beverage solution. This is what we call an IFS lobby or a dashboard or whatever you may want to call it. Now, what we recognize is that in ERP systems in previous years, they were almost like, I suppose, essentially a skin over Excel, um, and were potentially relatively clunky, clumsy to navigate. It wasn't easy to get the data you required out. It wasn't easy to digest the data. And what these lobbies offer you is an easy way to look at it and summarize all these granular transaction, whether it's goods in, return goods, scrap goods, um, and see that data in a way and digest it that suits you and your business to make these better, quicker business decisions. Um, these are dynamic, and as I work through them over the next few minutes, you'll see how we can interact and slice and dice the data. But essentially, I like to use the analogy that what we're looking at here is the outer layer of an onion, and as we click through to different areas, we're taking another layer off, another layer of the onion off until we get down to the granular core, essentially, which is supported by all the business functions within your organisation. As I touched on today, we're going to look specifically at supplier management, essentially. So I will click through from here to the procurement section. Now, what you can already see immediately is that IFS has given me some information that's relevant to me. So it's given us some key performance indicators. So along the top here, you can see it's already looking at data further down the layers of the onion to continue with that analogy and rolling them up to give me a snapshot of what's happening in my business at that point in time in this specific area. So here we can see along the top, again, it might be looking at Maverick orders if you're producing ad hoc ordering and you're being very reactional, and a target against that, a quick and easy indicator to see that, well, actually, we're having to make snapshot ad hoc orders above the level that we've agreed as a KPI. We can see again essentially here, is there a cost saving at the moment, whether you're generating PPV from smarter purchasing, better price negotiations, or indeed are you changing purchase orders on a regular basis, which again can impact the relationship I touched on with your supply base, where you're raising a PO but then going back and changing volumes, going back and changing the line items, whatever it may be. Now, this just gives a demonstration that IFS is already at this very first layer of the onion, giving information to you in a digestible manner, um, to allow you to make decisions and drill into either the exceptions or be confident that your business is performing to the KPIs that you've set. Now, just one last thing before we go into specifics is any of the lobbies which you see today, and I'll reinforce this point as we work through, are entirely configurable by you as a company, should you look to implement IFS. All of these lobbies can have different ways to analyze and look at the data, and we would work with you as your consultancy base to make sure that you've got the information required at your fingertips. So the first place we're going to start today, as we said, as we drill through, will be in supplier relationship management. Now I'm going to click through from here to the next area of the system. And immediately what you can see is that we now have data in front of us in a form that isn't just lists and lines and columns and rows. We now have graphical interface or representation. We now have um, we now have amalgamated or aggregated data to let us click through. We have different categorizations or representations of information that will allow us to interact with the system in a dynamic manner to get to the information that's important to me as the operator, essentially. Now, first and foremost, we'll maybe start as we work through about I kind of the first question is how are you classifying your supply base? At a very basic level, you're probably going to look to categorize that. And what do we have here on this graphic here? Well, essentially, we can see in this demo system that we have 6 suppliers and we already have 2 prospects. So we know that we're onboarding 2 new prospective suppliers and we have 6 suppliers set up. Obviously, within your business, dependent upon the size, dependent upon the market sector, these numbers will be significantly inflated. However, very quickly and easily, we've got our initial piece of categorization or essentially classification of that supply base. If we look further down, we can see the next layer here. So SRM segment, as we're calling it. So this is where I maybe touched on previously is how are you segmenting this supply base? Now here, what we can see is against any suppliers included here, we have grouped together 3 which are deemed to be transactional. So these may be someone that you are buying not on a regular basis. We have 4 who are strategic, so they are deemed to be absolutely key to us as a business or key to the demo business which I've set up at the moment. Um, and others which you may have as preferred. So you may have preferred alternate suppliers, but we've already went from a categorization to a segmentation to allow us to drill and focus in on specific areas of the business. Over and above that, so we have, as I say, ways to identify different areas, different types of partnerships that we have with our supply base, and what we can see along the graphical representation here on the right hand side is how are you rating those suppliers. So again, here it's entirely up to yourself how deep or not you would want to go by way of ratings. For me personally, I've liked to keep it relatively simple. You could be having a scale of 1 to 5. You could have, as I've chosen here, silver or bronze, silver, platinum, gold, and an extra category of ad hoc, where it's maybe one-off random purchases. Um, Equally, you could have that as 1 to 10. However, what you need to think to yourself when setting up any sort of rating against a business before deciding on the dynamics which dictate it is what does it really mean? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to the supplier essentially? If you have a rating of 1 to 10, what is the difference between a 6 and a 7? Will it essentially dictate a more preferential contract basis, longer term contracts, shorter term contracts, based on the dynamic which is going to deliver in this status essentially? So we've got 3. We've got categorizations, we've got segmentation, we've equally got rating essentially here. So we're already starting to look at our supply base through different layers, through different modes to analyze and assess their performance. Um, Over and above that, we can have, if you dependent on whether you are a big company, small, medium-sized enterprise, we have ways to also categorize that data and to a certain extent. If you have a dedicated procurement team who are looking at specific categories, so one maybe taking to deal with consumables, one to take to deal with something else, you can filter by representatives in charge of these suppliers. Or if you're looking to slice and dice the information to forms of business, you can equally do that. So we have protein, packaging, dairy, consumables. And as I say, these lobbies are dynamic very quickly and easily. I can click on this and I will filter this lobby now to look at only my dairy suppliers. Equally, I can go back, just using the back arrow. I can slice and dice this to only look at the suppliers that Anita as a representative is dealing with. So again, the lobbies become dynamic very quickly to let you slice and dice the information you need to give you something that you can then analyze and look at. So if I just click back so that we're looking at the entire data, I want to, as the purpose of today, look at who are our strategic suppliers and how are they performing. So again, remember we're at the first or the second layer of the onion here. So I can look at CRM segment, simply click through from here, and I'm now looking at all of my strategic suppliers. Now, quickly, when I look at SRM information, what we can see here is a different summary again of how these guys are performing. So we can see using almost a traffic light system here, where we would expect someone who is, for example, a rating platinum. So we're saying these are the best of the best that we've got. We'd expect everything to be green here along this line. Now this is looking at activities, so interactions with the customer, late reviews, potentially if you're looking at different categorization or um, codes of practice, next reviews, audits, NCRs. Again, the list can be completely defined by you. Now, as I look through this list here, one that's catching my eye essentially as I'm reviewing my strategic supplier performance is one here called KP Supplier. So we can very quickly see actually we've got 3 reds out of the 5. And I can say, well, actually, I want to see what's happening with this supplier. How do I get to the next layer to understand it? So from here, I can quickly select on them and you'll see we're through to the next layer of information. So we're building our way down, 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 down to almost not quite the transactions at a granular level, but we're seeing the impact of those now in a digestible manner. So along the top here, we can see the basic. So we're looking specifically at KP supplier in this information. We can see the next layer of SRM info. So we can see that the previous rating was platinum. The rating is currently gold. So there's been an issue previously that means they've been downgraded. Again, we've got visibility of any review dates that we have set up. So in this instance, we've got another one coming up towards the end of this month. And we can see anything that's connected to this supplier, which I'll come back to in a second, by way of audits, non-conformances, important documentation that I might want to go and review when I'm about to have a conversation with them about either good performance or bad performance. Again, this is not about um, always looking to hammer down your supplier. You want to identify the relationships which are positive as much as negative and reward and focus on those. Here, just looking at some of the representation below, we're now seeing here that we've got a summary of orders and another representation. So we can see here that, for example, we've got a target delivery KPI of 98%, and we're only this supplier is only achieving 83%. So immediately we can see there's an issue here. Are these deliveries early? Are these deliveries late? What is the problem here? Do I need to speak to this supplier in order to minimize the risk of the impact of this service that we're receiving from them? Is there a quality issue? Again, we can set KPIs and we can see performance immediately against the target that may well be agreed with them, that either promotes them or demotes them between one of our different ratings. So you can start to use this information to make decisions about the supplier. We have visibility immediately of other transactions with them. Again, if you start thinking about within your industry, within your organization, what are all the different touch points you have with a customer or supply base, sorry, whether it be from a technical perspective, a finance perspective. So here what we're looking at is spend from last year to this year. So although these figures are low, what we can see is there's been a 5-fold increase in spend with them. I would be wanting to speak to that supplier to say, well, we're giving you more business, but it looks like our service levels are dropping compared to our targets or agreed KPIs. So again, when we talk about who's the power in the relationship, now that I have these very simple pieces of information in front of me, I can see actually, well, I can go back to them with actual facts, actual data, and have a real proper open discussion with them about how we improve the situation that we find ourselves in, and equally then minimize any risks that the situation brings to our business. Again, by way of information that we can see in this snapshot of the supplier, whether it's quality aspects. If you, for example, in the UK, dealing with any of the major retailers, we can see that they've got an approved M&S audit, so they currently remain an M&S approved supplier. So we're okay to do business with them if the finalised product has been supplied to Marks and Spencers. If there's code of conduct, which is required by us or our customer base, I've used the example here of B Corp, which is one of the newer in the UK. We've got immediate visibility that they have that. It's approved. When's the next audit? When is it required? And we've got confidence in that this supplier is going to meet our needs in order to make sure that we can maintain the relationships and supply to our core customer base. Looking a little bit further out, whether your customers have some, and I've used just some examples here in the system, environmental aspects. So here we're just saying that they have green power generation. It's important to us as an organization, or maybe important to our supply base. And then lastly, just one that I've dropped in, which can sometimes be overlooked. Um, is your supply base robust? And here, this we can see that they've had a monthly credit check approval. So we know that in actual fact they're not struggling financially. Should we be looking to grow with this customer, supplier, sorry, we know that they're in a financial position to have the purchasing power to buy the materials they need to then supply us a product, and that they're not got any issues. And should this fail, we would immediately see on this lobby, in actual fact, there's an issue, and we should be speaking and engaging with them to see what risks that's bringing to our business. And just one final piece here, we can also see the interactions with that customer. So when we're talking about working in a collaborative manner internally, we can see that actually we have meetings set up to speak to them about potentially use just some random examples here. And as the barbecue range for the summer, we can see that we're looking and have a meeting to speak to them about co-manufacturing of a product. We're looking and speaking to them of a demo lined up for new product range. We can see that we've got activities or calls set up for pricing reviews for Q2 of 2022. So we get a real overall view of what's happening now, what's happening in the future, what impact that could have, and it allows us to assess any risks that that would bring to us. Equally, if we touch on the connections here, we can very immediately drill through to a granular layer. So if we clicked on audits here, we can see that the supplier has an audit. We're carrying out a supplier audit, sorry. We can click through, look at the details of that audit, and very quickly see that we are in the process of looking at their quality management systems. So you'll have real-time updates on these things as they work through. Again, if you're working in procurement and these are important to you, we can view any non-conformances. So I can click through and we can see here that a damaged pallet's been received and that may impact your production. It may mean a rejection. And we can quickly drill through within a couple of clicks within this fully integrated system to view the report. So again, here we can see that internally we're working on this. We're putting together corrective and preventive actions. We can see information that's related to it. We can see media. We can see anything that's required. So again, at your fingertips in only one or two clicks from this layer or overview screen, you can be looking at granular information to do with that customer, which will drive your conversations. So just to drop back to the presentation briefly, before we move on to the next area, and that's just a summary there of some little bits that we've talked on. So centralized digital data, segmentation, categorization, rating of suppliers, dynamic real-time data, all delivered in fully configurable lobbies. So moving on to the next area, so supplier performance management. So again, just by way of asking a few questions here is what defines supplier performance to your business? What is important to you and what is the metric you want to measure that will allow you to go back and manage this supplier relationship? How are you seeing the data? How are you analyzing the data which is gathered? And I just want to propose a concept of what difference would what we call a 360-degree view of a supplier make to you as a business. And I'll touch on that again in a second. So if you bear with me a second, just till I load up the next bit of the screen and then change over. So where are we now? So here's another lobby related to supplier performance. As you can see here, we have information put in a different digestible method in comparison to the last one. Now, again, these are completely tailorable, definable by you. So we can see some familiar areas which we looked at previously. Now we're looking at now as an entire company supply base, not one specific supplier. So here we're seeing the familiar areas of perfect orders, deliveries against target KPIs, quality against target KPIs. We're seeing performance by period. So we're starting to look at a little bit of analysis here, essentially, that we could see dips in performance over specific periods of time that we could then go back and speak to that certain supply base about. So again, giving you this rolled up data and different methods so that you can make decisions or form any interaction with the customer. But what we're seeing here again is now another layer where we're looking at another section of another layer of the onion essentially that we can drill through to. So we're seeing here now that not only is there a delivery issue, but we're seeing how many are early, how many are late, how many have been returned, where is the scrappage, where have deliveries been incomplete. So again, the system in the background is monitoring all of this from essentially goods in at the back door. And again, we can drill straight through from here to look at scrapped items. So we can see here that we've had 3 areas where a supplier has given us something which has resulted in something being scrapped. Within a couple of clicks, we can look at the details behind that and we can see the information as to why. So scrapping cause held in the system that someone selected when there's been an issue, in this case, cosmetic deficiency. Equally, we could look through from another area and look at the details behind this. And we're now seeing that something's failed a lab test. So you may do some analysis on goods in that will dictate whether you'll accept, receive, or reject that order. Now, as I touched on, these lobbies are completely configurable. So if you were wanting to maintain a report or an output based on these rejections or scrappages, we could essentially have a data, whether it's gathered in a counter, a graph, whether it's a specific report, so that you can then identify these issues and have a laser focus on them when they do crop up, so that you can go back to your supplier, manage the risk, and minimize it for you. And equally, that shows to your supplier that you are paying attention, you are tracking, you are monitoring, and that can only improve or guide them to improve the service that they are giving you. Equally within these, as we touched on before, they can slice and dice the information however you would require. So from this position, I can quickly focus on either one supplier, so I can look at them specifically and see the issues that they are bringing to me as their customer. Again, using either the traffic lights, graphical, however you want to digest the information. Clicking back one here, as we could do on the previous screens, we could look to essentially look at one form of business, one sector, one categorization. So I want to review as a purchaser just all of our dairy customers. Now, in this instance, we can see the same. Delivery reliability looks to be an issue by way of late deliveries. Quality, we're having some incomplete orders. We're having return orders. I can then take this information, roll it up, go back to my supplier and address the scenario to prevent it happening in the future and minimize the risk to my business. And what I touched on from here was, again, we can see the system rolling up lots of information. Now, if I just drop out and again show you essentially the concept of Supplier 360, and what I like to call this, and it looks a lot to digest, is a lobby on steroids. But what I want to get across to you today is that in the background, the IFSS system is tracking and monitoring all of these areas on a transactional basis. So whether it's goods in, whether it's overdue invoices, whether it's order amounts, whether it's open requisitions, whether it's any of these, and it rolls down and down. And what I want to kind of get across or convey to you today is, imagine this is the core of the onion. This is where the system is looking and monitoring all these transactions, rolling them all up. They're all available to you from it within IFS, and you can build that onion up out from this as a starting point, tailored and configured to your requirements to give you the reporting and visibility that you require. So that's the concept of Supplier 360 and the ability that you have to make the system give you the information that you require. Now, lastly today, I'll just switch back to the slides. Or the last area of the system to look at today is supply chain support. So the supplier management portal. So again, what you want to do by engaging in an enterprise relationship with suppliers is essentially allow them to interact with you as easily as they can. That will give improved supplier engagement, reduction in resource requirements on both parties, and give them visibility essentially immediately of any open orders, potentially invoices to be paid, forecasts. So again, improving that relationship and driving down further risks for both parties that are involved, which can only benefit each. So what I'll do just now is just swap to that screen to let you see it. So here what we're looking at is an order management for suppliers. Now, this essentially you would give any, this could be for strategic suppliers, preferred suppliers, whatever you deem is the necessary place to allow any of the heavy lifting to be done by them in the system. They would have a user login and would be restricted to only certain areas of the system that they could interact with. And what does it give me, taking my customer hat off and putting my supplier hat on, give me access to? So quickly and easily, as a supplier, I can see drill straight through to any open orders which we have on the system at the moment. I can see order lines which I need to confirm back to you as a customer essentially on the system, and I have awareness and visibility of them quickly and easily. I can see any late order lines which I have currently at the moment, and I can look to address and act upon these, communicate with you as my customer essentially. So what those just few sections are giving you is absolute control and visibility of the now. So that in itself means that your supply base can be in better, greater control because you're delivering the information to them in a format that means they can digest and act upon it. If we looked out to a next layer, potentially the system has capabilities to deal with consignment stock, or equally it can deal with any vendor managed inventory. So the customer or supplier, sorry, can look and see what VMI products have I got within supply base, have visibility just as this loads up of any supply plans within horizons that you may have dictated, any orders that have been raised to do that, putting the vendor in a position of power to control that and make sure you get the goods that you need at the time you want in order, on time, in full. So that's looking at the management of the wraparound management of any other specific agreements you've got. But we've looked at the kind of now and how they can see that. We've looked at the wraparound functionality or extensibility of that. What we want to emphasize here today again is just what does the future look like from this relationships, and you can give the supplier the information at their fingertips. The kind of visibility of here, we can see future demand as it pulls through. Oh, sorry, it's just looking at the wrong. Let me just take this back a little bit. They can have visibility of any future demand that you have on products that they supply. They can start to look and assess, well, based on wanted delivery dates, planned quantities, whether it's a requisition or an order, are they geared up to supply you that product? And can they achieve that in that time? Do they need to raise a flag to you, which would make you go to an alternate supplier? Or do you need to pivot and work with your customers to maybe manage that supply chain, minimize that risk? Um, and heading back by way of last piece, looking towards the future as you build these relationships, giving your supplier visibility of any open request for order confirmation or order quotation, for example. So in this instance, we can see that there's one request for quotation. We can see the details of that as the supplier. We can see that this customer's looking for some bulk milk product, 10,000 litres. I can go as a supplier, create a quotation on this system and feed that back into my customer. Again, that allows you to build upon those engaging relationships at an enterprise level. So I'll just swap back to my slide deck. So as I say, everything we've shown today by way of the system is all about driving down risk for both parties. Now, just by way of closing, and I know time is fleeting. I do talk a lot sometimes. We're just going to give you a very quick overview of IFS as a whole, and what IFS is, who IFS are, and what they can offer to you as a potential customer. So IFS is today a global company working with some of the world's largest businesses. In addition to leading products that are praised by both customers and analysts, the strong partner network with companies like ourselves at Cooper Software and the focused go-to-market strategy has delivered some of the ongoing success that you can see in the screen. Most recent investment in developing and launching the new cloud version IFS has led to further strong growth and company expansion. And you can see here the relatively eye-watering figures of 20% year-on-year growth. IFS recognizes, a bit like ourselves at Cooper Software, that we can't be best at everything. So they've chosen to focus on a handful of target industries and strive essentially to become experts not only in the software side of the business, but also understanding how the industry works as a whole. And I hope that resonates back with you to the framing of Cooper Software. We work hand in glove with IFS. We make sure we have the strengths required to deliver their product effectively and efficiently to the right industries. And how are they viewed by what makes IFS different? Well, as I touched on, industry depth. It's a single product with embedded innovation, whether it's using demand forecasting, which we've not looked at in this webinar, which can use artificial intelligence to track weather patterns, which may cause fluctuations in demands on your customer base, whether it's in service and maintenance using augmented reality or remote dialing. IFS is constantly evolving, constantly improving their offering. It's available in cloud or on premise, and I hope from today you've seen from some of the user interface interactions. It's good, it's easy to use, it's intuitive. It has what I need as a user to give me the information I require in the right format. And just finally, before handing back to Chris, just by way of independent reviews, and it's focusing your attention probably down to the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you can see here that in recent Gartner peer review, IFS Cloud has came out on top against some of our peers, whether it be Microsoft, Infor, SAP. So the IFS Cloud offering really is market leading, and I hope from what you've seen today, you can see the potential of the system and how that can help your business and your community deliver what you are aiming for.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. Right. Hopefully that's given everybody a good sense of what we're about at Cooper Software, our passion for helping businesses, as well as our passion for the software. We'll open the floor up now to some questions. Now, while everybody's putting those in, I have got a couple of questions that were sort of posed to us offline. So just go through those with you, Michael, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
See if any more drop in. So one of the questions that I got asked before we did the WebEx, knowing that we're going to be recording this, is can we change the data shown in the lobbies, and is that easy to do?
Absolutely. It's all held in the background essentially on operational statistics, as we'll call them. If there's a certain model, if something's important, we can roll them up, analyze them, weight them, anything that the customer requires to deliver the output that they need, completely configurable in the way they see it, completely configurable by the way the data is delivered in. So absolutely, to answer that question.
Perfect. One other one was, is this just a supply chain solution?
No, absolutely not. As I touched on previously, it's a fully integrated system. So financial backbone running through, full manufacturing capabilities, full procurement, demand planning. So it's one full integrated system which a company would look to implement across their entire business, and it can expand and contract as that business essentially grows and evolves, um, using certain modules to be switched on or switched off at any certain time. So it's a comprehensive suite of modules which work together in unison, essentially.
Well, luckily, you just led on to a question that's just popped in: is things like the lobbies available through the entire system?
Yeah, oh no, but yes, yes, and yes. I think probably today you could see my passion for getting the right information to people at the right time in the right format. 100%. There's what pre-canned lobbies which come as standard, but we would look to develop those, involve those as companies require them, configure and tailor those to their needs. So across the entire product, these lobbies are available, essentially tailored to those specific business areas.
Fantastic. Well, I'm just looking at the time. I'm really conscious that we're getting close to the end. So any questions that we haven't had a chance to answer, we'll pick those up and we can always reply to people on an individual basis. But just want to move on to the final section of today. And this is really powerful. And it's Coupa Software asking, can we help deliver your last ERP investment? As you can imagine, or as you can see today, Coupa Software, we are committed to partnering with businesses like yours to add value and consult with things like digital transformation. So what we're asking from today is, I'm just about to publish a poll. We need direction from you guys. You're the boots on the ground. You're the people that are experiencing this every day, and to help us direct where we go next with more sessions and webinars, more information that we put out there. We're just asking for a little bit of feedback so that we can get the best out and give you what you want to see. The other side is engagement. We want to talk to people. We want to have these conversations. As you can see, certainly Michael's very passionate. I'm very passionate about making a change within businesses. So we've got the time in the world to have these conversations with you. You can reach out to us via LinkedIn, the website, connect with us on LinkedIn as well. And we'll put aside as much time as you need to have those initial conversations to discuss what's happening in your world, the challenges that you face, not only now, but maybe what you foresee over the coming 12 months, to really embed ourselves with you. And I'll get killed if I don't mention it as well, but from my marketing team, from my head of marketing, Kerry, please give us a follow on LinkedIn. We work really hard to make as much content as we can, some really hard hitting content that hopefully can give you guys more of an understanding of who we are, what waves we're making in this industry, and how we're really helping people make a difference. So hopefully that gives everybody a good flavor. Michael, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, appreciate your expertise and going through that.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks everyone for taking part in today. Hopefully we can have some further conversations if there's some interest drilled up there.
No, fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll close the meeting now, and hopefully, like I say, if you need anything further, please reach out to us. We are here to have those conversations. Bye, guys.